Hello people, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name is FPL Phillips. It's time for another weekly episode of Eddie versus the Algorithm, where for game week 33 this time, I'm once again taking on the computer-generated team put together by the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm that's predicted to score the highest amount of points for this game week. Putting together my own free hit team, let's see if I can outscore it 4 points. It's currently 18-2 in my favour in the series, meaning that I've already confirmed the win for the season, but the algorithm is scoring a few points here or there now. It is too little too late, but it might be able to get somewhat close to me by the time game week 38 rolls around. It's going to try and do that with one more step in game week 33. Let's get into having a look at the teams and how both myself and the algo are shaping up ahead of this game week. So I've just gone and done the thing that most YouTubers do, at least once or twice every now and again. I recorded half of this video with my microphone off, so we're here again from the start. So I'll get to run through, for the second time for me, but for the first time for you, all the thoughts that I've had to mull over more than one time now. So yeah, we'll get into having a look at the algorithm for this week. 72 predicted points for this side. And in goal is going to be Flecken, so I've already kind of spoiled out the team for myself when I've seen it the first time round. But Brentford defence looks alright this week. Most of the waffle I was going on about earlier seems to be just about how clean sheets are pretty rubbish at the moment, and looking at them and looking for them almost always tends to backfire, and what you don't think is going to happen ends up happening. And often the stats aren't even that great either. Looking at clean sheet odds, looking at bookies odds, etc. for clean sheets doesn't even tend to work that well for me in my experience this season. Maybe other people will know better, or just have the foresight to stick to their guns and trust that the process that it will work. But I'm also just looking at fun picks, and Flecken probably does look like a fun pick for this week. Obviously, people are more so going to be looking at keepers with more favourable fixtures in the surrounding weeks when we're looking at doublers for game week 34 and 37, for example. But Flecken looks like a nice option for this game week in isolation, which, of course, is the focus of this entire series. Sheffield United at home, obviously one of those fixtures on paper where you can't really go wrong. And I think that's why he's joined in defence by his teammate Reguilon, who has been picking up an attacking return or two recently. A very painful one for those of us who free hit, or the people who just owned him in game week 29. The moons are still much and truly open from that red card. Akanji looks like a nice pick in that back line, and one that I wanted to point out of note. I think he looks like one of the most nailed Man City defenders for this weekend, where it's a very kind of unpredictable lineup at this point where I'm recording. It's on Thursday evening. The Liverpool game's just finished, and we haven't had any press conference news or anything from the Friday, so we could well get that. And of course, with Man City being the early kickoff, we could get league team news with their lineup on Saturday even. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that, and it's definitely a week to kind of leave it late and risk getting a leaked lineup, I think, if you are available and around at that time of the FPL deadline. But Akanji looks like a good favourable option for this week. And then Bradley, who actually didn't get any minutes in that Liverpool game. He was amongst the substitutes, just like Salah, Diaz were to start the game. He didn't actually get subbed on like Salah and Diaz, but he was sat alongside Trent Alexander-Arnold amongst the substitutes, which was something that has put me off going for Bradley a little bit, or investing in him. If you're looking at transferring him in right now, maybe that's enough to think Trent might be back quite soon and may even be starting games as soon as game week 34. So definitely something to keep an eye on with Bradley, and maybe, like I said, would be enough to put me off transferring him in with Trent's return definitely looming. In midfield, though, we're going to see Salah and Diaz, so those two Liverpool midfielders I just mentioned, alongside Saka, De Bruyne and Cole Palmer. So a very stereotypical, a very obvious, a very stats-focused midfield, I should say. But yeah, it looks very, very good. Unfortunately, there are a few maybe little minutes risks in here. Bukayo Saka being probably the one I like the least of this midfield. Villa is not an easy fixture, and Saka has looked a little bit worse for wear recently. He could definitely be at a risk of an early sub, I think, again, or maybe could even be rested in that game. Probably pretty unlikely, but I think Saka, when he's not getting 90 minutes, doesn't have that same kind of appeal, despite still obviously being on penalties the majority of the time in that Arsenal team. So he's probably the one I like the least of this midfield. I do like all the other four options. Salah and Diaz will be part of Liverpool, trying to redeem themselves amongst the home fan base at Anfield at the weekend, and try and get Crystal Palace and, put on a good showing and emphatic performance in that one. Although they have obviously had a couple of minutes. I think it was at half-time that Salah came on. Diaz maybe a little bit later or the other way around in that game. But I don't think it should make too much difference for the weekend. And then Cole Palmer, who's on fantastic form at the moment. Everton at home. Palmer at home just seems to look like a really good option. Of course, penalties and all that going in his favour too. And then De Bruyne, who is one of those ones who I think you do just need to wait for the lineup news on the day. I think with him being rested than the last time out, there's a chance he starts. Or, there's a chance he's just rested again and then they wait for the game against Real Madrid, which is obviously the more important kind of these two upcoming games, or the more tough fixture on paper, I should say. The Luton game is still very important for one to win, with Man City definitely in that title race, of course. So yeah, wait to see with De Bruyne. I think, I'm guessing we're going to get elite lineup, and we'll probably know either way come Saturday morning, so I can't give you too much info on whether I would think he's going to start or not. So yeah, best just to wait is my advice with that one. And then finally up front, we're going to see Erling Haaland with the captain's armband, of course, up against Luton at home. Another one he kind of have to wait for in terms of the team news and just make your decisions last minute in that regard. And then Alexander Isak, who's been in some fine form recently. Tottenham are definitely a weak defence as well. So yeah, really like him as a pick. He's been in a lot of teams recently in this series. So much and truly a thumbs up from me with that one. On the bench, we're going to see Chris Wood, Gusto, and Rozolev. So Chris Wood, who's been in good form. Gusto, who missed out entirely last time out for Chelsea, but we've had some positive news surrounding his injury. So if you do own Gusto, which I think a lot of people do, then hopefully he might be available for this game against Everton. And then Fabianski as the backup keeper, with Areola seemingly still out. So that's the algorithm team. Let's go and have a look at my side now and see how that compares. And there are probably more changes than there have been in a few of the more recent teams. I still with a largely similar kind of structure to the team, but there are some key differences in terms of personnel. Still got Salah, Diaz, and Palmer in there. Still got a bit of the defence as well. So got Reguilon and Flecken in there as well. But apart from that, all the other players are different. And I've moved the captaincy onto Mo Salah as well. Actually, you think that Liverpool are going to do pretty well against Crystal Palace. I could see them kind of following that narrative and redeeming themselves and showing the home fans, we might not win the Europa League anymore, but let's go out and win the Premier League and put a few decent goals past Palace. Salah's been particularly wasteful as of late. He could have definitely had a lot of goals in some of those games more recently if he was taking the chances. Of course, he may well just miss a load more chances against Crystal Palace, but I'm kind of hoping that Salah will cash in and kind of return to his former self that we know to be at least a bit more clinical. Elsewhere in the team, I've gone with Rico Lewis in the defence, so he's a bit of a punt, could well be starting in that kind of midfield role. Very fluid backline, isn't it anyway for Manchester City at times, but I think he's got a good chance of starting this weekend. Aït-Nouri just kind of has to be in the team at the moment when his fixture looks half decent, because he's playing kind of in the attack until all the Wolves' other attackers are back fit and available, in which case he'll probably drop back into a more defensive role. But for now, looks like he could well be starting in a more advanced position again, and when he's in that and he's got a fixture like Nottingham Forest, which is not easy, but it's still okay, then I'm going to have him in my side, to be honest, this week. Paqueta in midfield is just a player I've been enjoying watching a lot recently. He might not even be the best pick from West Ham, but the Fulham fixture, I think there could be goals in that one. And Paqueta I'd back to maybe not be scoring, but grabbing an assist or two, I can definitely see happening. And then I've gone with Doku and Alvarez of Man City, two attackers who I think are going to start that game against Luton personally. And so I'm just taking a bit of a punt, really, at this point in the season. And I've gone with Ivan Toney as my other attacker to kind of round off the front seven. Bench looks pretty similar. I've got Wood, I've got Bradley, and I've also got Van Heck. But yeah, hopefully I won't be needing any of those guys. I'm assuming, even if Alvarez and Doku don't start, they'll probably get subbed on anyway for Haaland, whoever it is who ends up starting, who needs to be rested for the Real Madrid game. So yeah, bench shouldn't make too much difference. The final thing we need to look at is the captaincy for this game week. Let's compare 4 of the top options. And so it's the same 4 options as last week, in my opinion. There are a few more differential picks you could definitely go for, but I think the Son fixture is definitely being kind of underlooked. I think from a kind of play styles and tactics matchup, this could not be a bad game for Son at all. Newcastle, when they do concede at home, sometimes, the floodgates open and they seem to lose their heads, and I could definitely see Son exploiting that. 4.8 predicted points, though, does set him the lowest of the bunch here, with Palmer not too far ahead on 5.1. Salah's on 7.4, and then Haaland way ahead on 8.7. The Luton fixture is obviously the best. The expected goals conceded of Luton over the last 6 game weeks has been the worst of these 4 defences. Everton, the second worst. Palace, the third worst. And Newcastle, the strongest defence of the bunch, seeming despite having a lot of injuries at the moment. Liverpool seem to be the best attack, with Man City and Chelsea pretty close even for second. And then Son and Spurs are the weakest attack of the bunch over the last 6. Palmer's expected FPL points per 90 has been the strongest over the last 6, so you got to take that with a pinch of salt. There's been quite a number of penalties included in that. Salah's on 9.12 with Haaland on 5.57, so he's the lowest of the bunch with Son on 6.57. So that's what's kind of swaying me towards Salah at the moment. His underlying numbers are incredible. He should have had a lot more returns than he has been getting. And yet, to be honest, Salah's just giving me that feeling this week where I think he's going to be a good captaincy option, but I've not been that great with my predictions over the last number of game weeks. So let me know who your guys' captain is down below in the comments. Also, let me know who's going to win, Eddie or the Algo for this week, having seen both the teams. I hope you guys get a green arrow for this week, and until I see you hopefully next time, I'll wish you all the best. Goodbye.